In the endless stretch of space, far beyond the reach of Earth's blue skies, a starship named the Stellar Horizon drifted silently through the void. The ship was sleek and powerful, its engines humming softly as it carried its crew deeper into uncharted regions of the galaxy. Onboard Commander Nathan Hayes stood at the helm, his sharp eyes scanning the viewscreen for anything unusual. He was a man of few words but deep thoughts, known for his calm demeanor even in the most dangerous situations. His crew trusted him completely, and he took that responsibility seriously. The mission had started weeks ago, with orders to explore a distant sector of space where no human had ever ventured. It was a place filled with mystery, dotted with dead stars and barren moons. For days, the crew had scanned the area, hoping to find anything that could shed light on the unknown. But so far, their efforts had yielded nothing. The vast emptiness of space seemed indifferent to their presence, almost mocking them. Then, one day, everything changed. It began with a faint signal detected by Lieutenant Jake Carter, the ship's communications officer. Jake was sitting at his station, adjusting the sensors, when he noticed something ADH weak energy signature coming from a nearby moon. At first, he thought it might be interference or some kind of glitch, but the readings were too consistent to ignore. He quickly alerted Nathan, who ordered the ship to change course and investigate. As the Stellar Horizon approached the moon, the crew grew more curious. The surface below was rocky and lifeless, covered in craters and dust. It looked like any other desolate world they had encountered during their journey. But as they moved closer, their scanners picked up something unexpected, a cluster of metallic objects scattered across the ground. These weren't natural formations. They were clearly artificial, crafted with precision and purpose. Nathan gave the order to send down a landing party. Alongside him went Dr. Rachel Morgan, the ship's xenobiologist, whose expertise lay in studying alien life forms. Also joining them was Jake, who wanted to get a closer look at the strange signal. The trio suited up and boarded a small shuttlecraft, descending toward the moon's surface. When they landed, the scene before them was eerie. The air was silent, save for the soft crunch of their boots against the rocky terrain. In front of them stood several large structures, shaped like pods or containers. They were made of a shiny, silvery material that reflected the dim light of the distant sun. Some of the pods were open, while others remained sealed shut. Whatever had been inside them was long gone, or so it seemed. Rachel knelt down to examine one of the empty pods. She ran her gloved fingers over its smooth surface, searching for clues. "These are advanced," she murmured. "Whoever built them knew what they were doing." Jake nodded in agreement. "But where are they now, and what were they keeping?" Here, before anyone could answer, a low growl echoed through the silence. Everyone froze, their heads snapping toward the sound. From behind a pile of rocks emerged a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was tall and lean, with fur that shimmered like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its teeth gleamed sharply as it bared them in. Warning, Nathan instinctively reached for his weapon, but Rachel raised a hand to stop him. "Wait," she whispered urgently. "Don't provoke it." The creature didn't attack right away. Instead, it stood there, watching them carefully. Then, to everyone's surprise, it stepped aside, revealing 3 smaller versions of itself. Hiding behind it, these younger creatures were smaller and less intimidating, but they shared the same glowing eyes and metallic fur. It was clear they were a family. The larger one was the mother, protecting her cubs. Rachel's heart sank as she took in the sight. The mother was injured, her side marked with deep gashes that oozed a strange, silvery fluid. Despite her wounds, she remained alert, positioning herself between the humans and her young ones. Her posture was defensive, but there was also a sense of desperation in her movements, as if she knew she couldn't hold out much longer. "They've been abandoned," Rachel said quietly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Whoever left these pods behind must have dumped them here too." Nathan frowned. "You think someone just left them to die?" "It looks that way," Rachel replied. "Look at her injuries. She's been fighting to survive, probably scavenging whatever she can find." But without help she won't last much longer, and neither will her cubs. Jake crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. Even if we wanted to help, how do we know they're not dangerous? Those teeth look like they could tear through. Steel! They're scared, Rachel countered. If they wanted to attack us, they would have done it already. Instead, she's standing her ground to protect her young. That tells me she's intelligent and worth saving. Nathan hesitated. He understood Rachel's point, but he also knew the risks involved. Bringing alien creatures aboard the ship could put the entire crew in danger. Still, he couldn't ignore the fact that these beings were suffering. Something about the mother's determination reminded him of his own past, of times when he'd faced overwhelming odds and refused to give up. He couldn't just walk away. "All right," he finally said. "We'll take them with us for now, but we'll keep them quarantined until we know more." Relief washed over Rachel's face. "Thank you, Commander. You won't regret this." With great care, the team managed to coax the mother and her cubs into a transport container. The process wasn't easy. The mother was wary and protective, snarling whenever anyone came too close. But Rachel used her calm demeanor and gentle gestures to earn the creature's trust, convincing her that they meant no harm. Eventually, the family was safely loaded onto the shuttlecraft and brought back to the stellar horizon. Back on the ship, the crew gathered around as the container was placed in a secure holding area. Through the transparent walls they watched, the mother pace anxiously, her cubs sticking close to her side. There was a mix of awe and apprehension among the crew members. Some were fascinated by the creature's unique appearance, while others shared Jake's concerns about potential danger. For now, though, the focus was on survival. Rachel immediately set to work tending to the mother's injuries, using specialized tools to clean and treat the wounds. The silvery fluid proved to be some kind of biometallic compound, which explained the creature's unusual appearance. As Rachel worked, she couldn't help but marvel at the complexity of their biology. These beings were part organic, part machine, a fusion of nature and technology that defied explanation. Meanwhile, Nathan convened a meeting with his senior staff to discuss the next steps. The decision to bring the wolves aboard had been made in the heat of the moment, but now they needed a plan. What would they do with these creatures once they recovered? Could they find a safe place to release them, or would they need to keep them under observation indefinitely? The question swirled in Nathan's mind as he stared out the window at the endless expanse of stars. He knew they had taken a significant risk by interfering with alien life forms, but deep down, he believed they had done the right thing. Compassion, he thought, was one of humanity's greatest strengths. And if they could extend that compassion to another species, even one as mysterious and potentially dangerous as these wolves, they might just prove that humanity still had hope for the future. Little did they know, this decision would lead them down a path full of challenges, discoveries, and revelations that would change their lives forever. Back on the stellar horizon, the crew was buzzing with mixed emotions. The decision to bring the alien wolves aboard had been made quickly, but now reality was setting in. Some crew members were fascinated by the creatures, while others felt uneasy about having them so close. The mother wolf, whom Rachel had started calling Luna, and her 3 cubs were safely secured in a quarantine chamber. But their presence loomed large over everyone's thoughts. Rachel spent most of her time in the biolab, monitoring Luna and her cubs. She worked tirelessly, checking their vital signs, treating Luna's injuries, and observing their behavior. Despite the initial fear and hostility, Luna seemed to be calming down. Her glowing eyes no longer burned with anger, and she allowed Rachel to approach without growling. The cubs, who Rachel named Orion, Vega, and Sirius, were curious and playful, often sniffing at the edges of the containment area or nuzzling against their mother for comfort. Lieutenant Jake Carter wasn't convinced that bringing the wolves aboard was a good idea. He voiced his concerns during meals and briefings, pointing out the risks. "We don't know what these things are capable of," he said one evening in the mess hall. "They look like animals, but they're clearly not ordinary. What if they turn on us? Or worse, what if they're weapons?" His words carried weight, especially among the more cautious members of the crew. But Rachel refused to back down. She believed the wolves deserved a chance to survive, and she was determined to prove they weren't a threat. "They're intelligent," she argued. "You saw how Luna protected her cubs? That shows reasoning, maybe even emotion. If we abandon them now, we're no better than whoever left them to die." The debate spilled into every corner of the ship, dividing opinions. Some supported Rachel, moved by her compassion and determination. Others sided with Jake, worried about the potential danger. Nathan Hayes, as the commander, found himself caught in the middle. He admired Rachel's empathy, but shared Jake's concerns about safety. The last thing he wanted was to put his crew in harm's way. One night, after another heated discussion in the briefing room, Rachel approached Nathan privately. She knew he was struggling with the decision and wanted to make her case directly. "Commander," she began softly, "I understand your hesitation. You're responsible for everyone on this ship, and I respect that. But think about what we're doing here. We've been given an opportunity to do something truly meaningful. Show that humanity can rise above fear and act with kindness." Nathan listened quietly, his expression unreadable. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as if searching for answers in the steel panels above. Finally, he spoke. "It's not just about fear, Rachel. It's about responsibility. If something goes wrong, if those wolves hurt someone, it's on me, and I can't take that lightly." "I know," Rachel replied. "But isn't it also your responsibility to lead by example, to show the crew what it means to care not just for each other, but for life itself, no matter where it comes from?" She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "You once told me that exploration isn't just about discovering new worlds, it's about understanding them. Isn't that why we're out here?" Her words struck a chord. Nathan remembered the stories his grandfather used to tell him about Earth's early days of space travel. Back then, humanity had been reckless, driven by greed and ambition. Over time, they had learned to value cooperation and curiosity. Now standing on the edge of the unknown, Nathan realized he had a choice: to repeat the mistakes of the past or to forge a new path. "All right," he said finally. "We'll keep them aboard for now. We need to proceed carefully. No unnecessary risks." Relief flooded Rachel's face. "Thank you, Commander. You won't regret this." Over the next few days, the crew adjusted to life with their unexpected guests. The wolves became a constant topic of conversation, with people speculating about their origins and purpose. Were they experiments gone wrong? Weapons left behind by an advanced civilization? Or simply misunderstood creatures caught in the crossfire of galactic politics? Rachel continued her work, documenting every detail about the wolves' behavior and physiology. She discovered that their metallic fur wasn't just decorative. It served as a kind of sensory system, allowing them to detect changes in temperature, pressure, and even electromagnetic fields. Their glowing eyes, meanwhile, appeared to function like cameras, capturing images and storing data within their neural networks. These findings only deepened the mystery surrounding them. As Luna's health improved, her interactions with the humans became less guarded. She still kept a watchful eye on her cubs, but she no longer flinched when Rachel entered the containment area. One day, Rachel brought a small device designed to emit low-frequency vibrations that sound similar to purring in Earth animals. When she activated it, Luna tilted her head curiously, then stepped closer to investigate. For the first time, she let Rachel touch her side gently. The silvery fluid beneath her fur warmed to the touch. The moment was fleeting, but significant. It marked the beginning of trust between human and alien. Word of the breakthrough spread quickly, and soon, other crew members began visiting the biolab to catch a glimpse of the wolves. Even Jake, who had been the most vocal opponent, couldn't resist stopping by. At first, he stayed near the door, arms crossed and scowling. But as he watched Luna interact with Rachel, his expression softened. It's different than I expected," he admitted reluctantly one afternoon. "Still dangerous, though." "They're survivors," Rachel corrected him. "Just like us." Jake didn't respond, but his visits became more frequent. He started asking questions about the wolves' biology and behavior, genuinely interested. Despite his lingering skepticism, slowly, his attitude began to shift from outright hostility to cautious curiosity. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew grew fond of the wolves. Emily Dawson, the communications officer, often brought snacks to share with Rachel during her shifts in the lab. She loved watching the cubs play, their movements graceful yet clumsy as they tumbled over each other. Ryan, the boldest of the three, sometimes pressed his nose against the glass, wagging his tail like a puppy eager for attention. Even Nathan found himself drawn to the wolves. Late at night, when the ship was quiet and the stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, would visit the biolab to check on them. There was something mesmerizing about Luna's presence, her strength, her resilience, her unwavering devotion to her young. She reminded him of qualities he admired in his own crew: courage, loyalty, and adaptability. Despite the growing bond between humans and wolves, tensions remained. Not everyone was comfortable with the idea of keeping such powerful creatures aboard the ship. Accidents happened, and the stakes were higher when dealing with beings whose capabilities were still largely unknown. A minor incident reinforced these fears when Vega accidentally triggered a sensor malfunction while playing near the containment wall. The resulting alarm sent the entire crew scrambling, convinced there had been a breach, though the situation was quickly resolved. It reignited the debate about whether the wolves should stay. Nathan called another meeting to address the issue. This time, however, the tone was different. Instead of outright opposition, the discussion focused on finding solutions. Emily suggested reinforcing the containment area with additional safeguards. Jake proposed running simulations to predict possible scenarios involving the wolves. Rachel advocated for continuing her research, arguing that understanding the wolves' nature was key to ensuring everyone's safety. In the end, Nathan decided to keep the wolves aboard for now, but he also implemented stricter protocols, including round-the-clock monitoring and restricted access to the biolab. The compromise satisfied most of the crew, though some still harbored doubts. For Rachel, it was enough. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She was determined to see it through. As the days passed, the wolves continued to thrive under Rachel's care. Luna's injuries healed completely, and her cubs grew stronger and more adventurous. They explored every inch of their enclosure, testing boundaries and learning about their surroundings. Through it all, Luna remained protective yet patient, guiding her young with a gentle firmness that earned her the crew's admiration. For Nathan, the experience was transformative. He had always prided himself on being a rational leader, making decisions based on logic and strategy. But the wolves challenged him to think differently, to consider the moral implications of his choices. Watching Rachel work, seeing the way she connected with Luna and her cubs, reminded him of the importance of empathy and leadership. One evening, as he stood in the biolab observing the wolves, Rachel joined him. "Do you ever wonder what they're thinking?" she asked, her voice soft. "All the time," Nathan replied. "But I think part of exploring is accepting that we won't always have answers. Sometimes it's enough to appreciate the mystery." Rachel smiled, "And sometimes it's enough to give someone or something a second chance." Nathan nodded, his gaze fixed on Luna as she rested with her cubs curled up beside her. In that moment, he felt a glimmer of hope not just for the wolves, but for humanity itself. Perhaps he thought the real discovery wasn't the wolves at all. Perhaps it was the reminder that even in the vastness of space, compassion could bridge the gap between worlds. As the days turned into weeks, life aboard the stellar horizon settled into a new rhythm. The presence of Luna and her cubs had become a part of the ship's daily routine. For Rachel, the wolves were more than just subjects of study. They were companions in a strange and lonely corner of space. She spent hours observing their behavior, taking notes, and testing theories about their abilities. Every discovery brought her closer to understanding them, but it also deepened the mystery. Luna, in particular, fascinated Rachel. The mother wolf was fiercely intelligent, with an almost human-like awareness of her surroundings. She seemed to recognize patterns and respond to changes in her environment. When Rachel entered the containment area, Luna would often stand still, watching her movements carefully before deciding whether to approach. It was as if she were evaluating Rachel's intentions, weighing trust against caution. Over time, that trust grew stronger, and Luna began to allow Rachel closer, even nudging her cubs toward her as if encouraging interaction. The cubs Orion, Vega, and Sirius were endlessly curious. They bounced around the enclosure like energetic puppies, sniffing at everything and chasing each other in playful tumbles. Orion, the boldest of the three, loved to explore. He would press his nose against the walls of the containment area, trying to figure out how far he could go before Luna called him back with a low growl. Vega was quieter, often sticking close to her mother, while Sirius seemed content to observe from a distance, his glowing eyes wide with curiosity. Rachel noticed that the wolves communicated not through sounds, but also through subtle body language. A flick of the tail, a tilt of the head, or a shift in posture conveyed emotions and intentions. She began documenting these signals, hoping to decipher their meaning. One day, while observing Luna, Rachel realized something remarkable. The mother wolf appeared to be teaching her cubs. When one of them misbehaved, like when Orion got too close to a sensor panel, Luna would gently nudge them away, her movements deliberate and patient. It was clear that these creatures weren't just surviving, they were learning. The crew's attitude toward the wolves continued to evolve. At first, many had been wary, keeping their distance and avoiding the biolab altogether. But as the weeks went by, more and more people stopped by to watch the wolves interact. Emily Dawson became a regular visitor, bringing snacks for Rachel and chatting about the cubs' antics. Even Jake Carter, who had once been the most vocal opponent of keeping the wolves aboard, found himself drawn to them. He still carried a healthy dose of skepticism, but he couldn't deny the bond forming between the humans and the wolves. One afternoon, Jake joined Rachel in the biolab. He stood near the glass, arms crossed, watching as Luna rested with her. Cubs nestled around her. There. Different than I thought, he admitted reluctantly. Still dangerous, though. They're survivors, Rachel replied, echoing her earlier words. Survivors don't give up easily. Jake nodded. Slowly. I guess that's something we have in common? His comment surprised Rachel. She glanced at him, noticing the hint of admiration in his voice. You know, she said, they might seem dangerous because of what they are, but danger isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just misunderstood. Jake didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched as Orion pounced on Vega, sending both cubs tumbling across the floor in a flurry of glowing fur. Luna looked up briefly, her expression unreadable, then lay back down with a soft huff. Maybe, Jake said finally. But we can't afford to let our guard down. I'm not asking you to, Rachel assured him. Just keep an open mind. Meanwhile, Nathan Hayes wrestled with the implications of keeping the wolves aboard. On one hand, he was proud of how the crew had adapted to the situation. The quarantine protocols were working, and there hadn't been any serious incidents since the initial alarm caused by Vega. On the other hand, the longer the wolves stayed, the harder it would be to decide what to do with them. Could they really? Release them onto another planet? Would they survive without human intervention? And if they kept them aboard indefinitely, what message would that send about humanity's role in the galaxy? These questions weighed heavily on Nathan's mind. He often found himself staring out the viewport, lost in thought. The vastness of space reminded him of how small humanity truly was, a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. Yet at the same time, it highlighted the importance of every decision they made. Bringing the wolves aboard hadn't just been an act of compassion. It had been a statement about who they were as explorers and as people. One evening, after a long day of meetings and reports, Nathan decided to visit the biolab. He wasn't sure why, he just felt drawn to the wolves, as if their presence offered some kind of clarity. When he arrived, Rachel was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her tablet balanced on her knee as she recorded observations. Luna lay nearby, her cubs curled up around her like a furry constellation. You're here late? Nathan said, breaking the silence. Rachel looked up and smiled. Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd get some work done. Nathan nodded and stepped closer to the glass. How are they doing? Better than ever, Rachel replied. Luna's fully recovered and the cubs are growing fast. You're smart. Commander, smarter than I expected, I've noticed, Nathan said. It's hard not to see it. They remind me of us in a way. Rachel tilted her head, intrigued. What do you mean? They adapt, Nathan explained. They learn. They protect their own. Those are qualities we value in ourselves. Maybe that's why we connect with them so easily. Rachel considered his words. Do you think that's enough? Could justify keeping them here? Nathan hesitated. I don't know. It's complicated. We've taken responsibility for them. But where does that responsibility end? Do we find them a new home? Keep them with us? Or, he trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence, or send them back to whoever left them behind? Rachel finished for him. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. It's not that simple, Nathan said quickly. We don't even know who or what left them. For all we know, going back could put them in more danger, and staying here doesn't, Rachel challenged. Every day we delay, they grow more attached to us. What happens if we eventually have to let them go? Nathan sighed. I wish I had all the answers, Rachel, but I don't. All I can do is make the best decisions I can with the information we have. Rachel softened. I know. I appreciate that. I want to believe we're doing the right thing, so do I. Nathan said quietly. For now, let's focus on understanding them better. Knowledge will help us make the right choice. Back in the lab, Rachel resumed her work, jotting down notes about the wolves' interactions. As she observed Luna, she noticed something unusual. The mother wolf was standing near the edge of the containment area, her head tilted slightly as, if listening to something, her ears twitched and her glowing eyes narrowed in concentration. Then, without warning, she let out a low, rumbling growl that sent shivers down Rachel's spine. What is it? Nathan asked, stepping closer too. The glass dot. Rachel shook her head. I'm not sure. She's never done that before. The sound seemed to resonate throughout the room, vibrating faintly in the air. The cubs stirred, lifting their heads to look at their mother. Luna remained motionless, her gaze fixed on something beyond the walls of the containment area. Rachel followed her line of sight, but saw nothing unusual. Could it be the ship? Nathan wondered aloud. Some kind of frequency interference? It's possible, Rachel said, but why now? And why would it affect her like this? Before they could investigate further, the growling stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Luna relaxed, shaking her head as if clearing it of cobwebs. The cubs returned to their play, seemingly unaffected by the incident. Rachel exchanged a puzzled glance with Nathan. Well, he said after a moment, that was interesting. Interesting isn't the word I'd use, Rachel muttered, scribbling furiously in her notebook, but it's definitely worth looking into. Over the next few days, Rachel ran tests to determine what might have triggered Luna's reaction. She reviewed the ship's logs, checked for any anomalies in the environmental systems, and even consulted with the engineering team. Nothing unusual turned up. Whatever had caused the disturbance remained a mystery. Despite the unanswered questions, life aboard the Stellar Horizon continued. The bond between the crew and the wolves grew stronger with each passing day. Even Jake, who had once been the most skeptical, found himself softening. One evening, he sat in the mess hall with Emily and Nathan, discussing the latest developments. I'll admit, Jake said, they're not as bad as I thought. Still weird, though. Weird is good, Emily teased. Keeps things interesting, Nathan chuckled. That's one way to put it. As the conversation drifted to lighter topics, Rachel entered the room, carrying a tray of food. She joined the group, sliding into the seat next to Emily. Any news? She asked, referring to the mysterious growling incident. Nothing yet, Nathan replied, but we're keeping an eye on it. Rachel nodded, picking at her meal absent-mindedly. There's something else, she said after a moment. Something. I haven't told anyone. Everyone turned to look at her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. What is it? Nathan asked. Rachel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think Luna knows we're trying to help her, not just because of the care we've given her, but I think she understands us. As the weeks passed aboard the Stellar Horizon, Rachel's research into Luna and her cubs reached new depths. She had always been driven by curiosity, but now her work took on a sense of urgency. The mysterious growling incident lingered in her mind, unresolved and unexplained. It wasn't just a random occurrence. It felt like a clue, a piece of the puzzle waiting to be understood. Determined to uncover the truth, Rachel dedicated herself fully to studying the wolf's biology and behavior. One morning, as she prepared for another round of tests, Rachel noticed something unusual about Luna's metallic fur. Tiny patterns glimmered faintly beneath the surface, almost like circuitry. At first, she thought it might be a trick of the light, but upon closer inspection, she realized the patterns were shifting, moving like waves across Luna's body. Intrigued, Rachel grabbed her scanning equipment and began analyzing the phenomenon. The results were astonishing. Embedded within Luna's fur were microscopic implants, intricately designed and seamlessly integrated with her organic tissue. These weren't natural features. They were technological enhancements, crafted with precision far beyond anything humanity had achieved. Rachel's heart raced as she pieced together what this meant. Luna wasn't purely an animal. She was part machine, a hybrid creation designed for a specific purpose. Rachel immediately called Nathan and Jake to the biolab to share her findings. When they arrived, she explained everything in simple terms. Luna isn't just alive, she said, pointing to the glowing patterns on Luna's fur. She's engineered. Someone built her. Jake frowned, his skepticism returning. You're saying she's a weapon? It's possible, Rachel admitted. But we don't know for sure yet. What I do know is that whoever created her wanted her to be more than just a tool. Look at how she interacts with her cubs. Look at how she responds to us. She has instincts, emotions, maybe even memories. Nathan leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Memories? You think she remembers being abandoned? I think it's worth finding out, Rachel replied. If we can access those memories, we might learn who left her behind. Why? The idea was risky. Probing Luna's neural pathways could trigger unpredictable reactions, potentially endangering both the wolves and the crew. But Rachel argued that the potential benefits outweighed the risks. Understanding Luna's origins could help them make informed decisions about her future. After much deliberation, Nathan gave his approval, provided strict safety protocols were followed. Over the next several days, Rachel worked tirelessly to develop a non-invasive method of accessing Luna's memories. She used low-frequency pulses to stimulate the neural implants without causing harm. The process required patience and precision, but eventually, as she succeeded in extracting fragments of data stored within Luna's mind, what she discovered was both fascinating and heartbreaking. Through fragmented images and sensations, Rachel pieced together glimpses of Luna's past. She saw towering structures made of glass and steel, bustling with activity. There were beings, tall, slender, and luminous, moving through the scenes, their movements graceful and deliberate. They were clearly advanced, possessing technology far superior to anything humanity had encountered. But then the tone shifted. The peaceful scenes dissolved into chaos. Explosions lit up the sky, and the once bustling structures crumbled into ruin. In the midst of the destruction, Luna stood alongside others like her, fighting fiercely against an unseen enemy. Her body moved with mechanical precision, her claws tearing through adversaries with deadly efficiency. Yet despite her strength, she was outnumbered. One by one, her companions fell until only she remained. The final memory was the most haunting. Luna and her cubs stood inside a containment pod, surrounded by the same luminous beings who had created them. Their expressions were cold, devoid of emotion. They spoke in a language Rachel couldn't understand, but their intent was clear. Luna and her young were no longer needed. Without hesitation, they sealed the pod and ejected it into space, leaving them to drift toward the desolate moon where the stellar horizon had found them. When Rachel finished reviewing the data, she sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by what she had seen. Luna wasn't just a weapon. She was a victim, created for war, discarded when her usefulness ended. The cruelty of it all struck Rachel deeply, reinforcing her belief that they had done the right thing by rescuing her. She shared, the findings with Nathan and the rest of the senior staff during a private briefing. The room fell silent as Rachel described the memories, her voice trembling with emotion. When she finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "That's awful," she said softly. "How could anyone do that to another living being?" "It's not about morality," Jake replied grimly. "It's about survival. If they didn't need her anymore, keeping her around would have been a liability." "Maybe," Nathan interjected, "but that doesn't mean we have to follow their example. We've already decided to treat Luna and her cubs differently. That's what sets us apart." Rachel nodded in agreement. "Exactly. This is our chance to show that compassion matters, that even in the face of fear or uncertainty, we can choose kindness over cruelty." The decision to keep the wolves aboard solidified after the briefing. With a clearer understanding of their origins, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just caring for abandoned creatures, they were giving them a second chance at life. For many, including Jake, this realization marked a turning point. He still harbored concerns about the risks, but he no longer questioned the morality of their actions. In the days that followed, Rachel focused on helping Luna recover from the trauma of her memories. Though the mother wolf couldn't communicate verbally, her behavior suggested she understood what Rachel was doing. She allowed Rachel closer than ever before, resting her head on Rachel's lap as if seeking comfort. The cubs, sensing their mother's vulnerability, stayed close, their playful energy subdued for a time. Meanwhile, the crew continued to adapt to life with the wolves. Emily started documenting their interactions, capturing moments of connection on video to share with the rest of the team. Jake volunteered to assist Rachel in the lab, lending his technical expertise to refine the scanning equipment. Even Nathan spent more time observing the wolves, marveling at their resilience and intelligence. One evening, as the ship drifted silently through the stars, Nathan joined Rachel in the biolab. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered notes and tablets, while Luna rested nearby with her cubs curled up beside her. "Still working?" Nathan asked, leaning against the wall. Rachel smiled tiredly. "Always. There's so much to learn." "No. You've already done incredible work," Nathan said. "We wouldn't be here without you. Here's hoping it makes a difference," Rachel replied. "For them and for us." Nathan nodded, his gaze drifting to Luna. "Do you think she knows we're trying to help her?" "Really knows?" Rachel considered the question. "I think so. Maybe not in the way we understand, but yes. I think she trusts us." "That's something," Nathan said quietly. "Trust is hard to come by these days." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as Orion nudged Vega playfully, prompting a mock chase around the enclosure. Sirius hung back, content to observe from a safe distance. Luna raised her head briefly, her glowing eyes meeting Nathan's before she settled back down with a soft huff. "It's strange," Nathan mused. "Out here in the middle of nowhere, we find something that reminds us of home." Rachel looked at him curiously. "What do you mean? These wolves, they're not so different from us. They fight, they protect, they adapt, and they want to survive just like we do. Maybe that's why we connect with them, because deep down, we're all looking for the same thing." Rachel nodded slowly, her thoughts turning to the vastness of space stretching endlessly beyond the ship's walls. For all its mysteries and dangers, it held the promise of discovery, not just of new worlds, but of new ways of thinking. The wolves had taught them that compassion wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. And in choosing to care for Luna and her cubs, they had taken a step toward becoming better versions of themselves. As the hours slipped by, the ship hummed softly, carrying its passengers deeper into the unknown. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and questions yet to be answered. But for now, there was peace, a fragile, fleeting moment of connection between humans and aliens, united by the simple desire to survive and thrive and wash. And perhaps Rachel thought as she watched Luna curl protectively around her cubs, that was enough. As the stellar horizon continued its journey through the galaxy, The decision about what to do with Luna and her cubs weighed heavily on everyone's minds. The revelations about Luna's origins had deepened the crew's sense of responsibility. But it also raised new questions. Could they release the wolves onto another planet? Should they search for their creators and confront them? Or should they keep the wolves aboard indefinitely, knowing the risks involved? Nathan called a meeting to address these concerns. The entire senior staff gathered in the briefing room, their expressions reflecting a mix of determination and uncertainty. Rachel sat at the table, clutching a tablet filled with notes from her research. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed, while Emily fidgeted nervously with a pen. Everyone knew this discussion was critical and would shape not only the wolves' future, but also the ship's mission. "We've come a long way since we found them," Nathan began, his voice steady. "But now we need to decide what happens next. Staying here isn't an option forever. We have to figure out where they belong." Rachel spoke first. "They can't go back to whoever created them, not after what they've been through. Those beings abandoned them without a second thought. If we return them, it could mean certain death." Jake nodded reluctantly. "I agree. But keeping them aboard isn't risk-free either. They're smart, adaptable, and possibly dangerous." "What if something goes wrong?" Emily chimed in, her tone hopeful. "What if we find them a new home? A place where they can live freely, away from people who might hurt them more, be hurt by them?" The idea sparked interest around the table. It was risky, but it offered a compromise, a way to give the wolves independence without exposing the crew to unnecessary danger. Nathan considered it carefully, weighing the pros and cons. "It's worth exploring," he said finally. "Finding a suitable planet won't be easy. It has to have the right conditions, resources, shelter, safety. Safety is key," Jake added. "We don't want to drop them off somewhere only for predators or hostile environments to finish the job." Rachel nodded, agreed. "But I think it's our best shot. And before we make any decisions, we need to test how well they interact with us. If we're going to release them, we need to know they won't turn on us or each other in the process." Her suggestion led to a bold plan. Rachel would enter the containment area alone. Unarmed, relying solely on the bond she'd built with Luna. It was a daring move, one that carried significant risks. If Luna perceived Rachel as a threat, even unintentionally, the consequences could be catastrophic. But Rachel insisted it was necessary to prove the wolves' intentions, and to show the crew that trust could bridge even the widest gaps. The experiment took place 2 days later. The entire crew gathered outside the biolab, watching anxiously through the glass walls as Rachel prepared to step inside. She wore her usual lab coat, devoid of tools or weapons, her hands empty and visible. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain calm. This wasn't just about science. It was about faith, the belief that kindness and understanding could overcome fear. Luna stood near the center of the enclosure, her cubs huddled close. Her glowing eyes locked onto Rachel as she entered, her posture tense but not aggressive. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension palpable. Then slowly, Luna stepped forward, her movements deliberate. She sniffed the air, her ears twitching. As she evaluated Rachel's presence, Rachel knelt down, lowering herself to Luna's level. "It's okay," she whispered softly, though she knew the words meant nothing to the wolf. What mattered was her tone, her body language, the absence of threat. Slowly, she extended a hand, palm up, inviting rather than challenging. Luna hesitated, her head tilting slightly. Then, to everyone's amazement, she stepped closer, her nose brushing gently against Rachel's outstretched hand. The contact sent a ripple of awe through the observers outside. Even Jake, who had always been skeptical, couldn't hide his surprise. Encouraged by the success, Rachel stayed still, allowing Luna to investigate further. The mother wolf circled her cautiously, her glowing eyes never leaving Rachel's face. When she seemed satisfied, she turned her attention to her cubs, nudging them forward. Orion, ever the brave one, approached first, his tail wagging tentatively. Vega followed, more hesitant, while Sirius lingered behind, content to watch. For several minutes, Rachel interacted with the wolves, speaking softly and moving slowly. There was no aggression, no sign of hostility. Instead, there was curiosity and unspoken connection that transcended species. By the time Rachel exited the enclosure, the crew erupted into quiet cheers. The experiment had worked. The wolves weren't just intelligent, they were capable of trust. With renewed confidence, the crew turned their focus to finding a suitable planet for the wolves. Using the ship's sensors, they scanned nearby systems, searching for worlds with temperate climates, abundant resources, and minimal signs of intelligent life. After days of analysis, they identified a promising candidate, a lush, forested moon orbiting a distant gas giant. Its atmosphere was breathable, its terrain varied, and its ecosystems teeming with life. Most importantly, there were no indications of advanced civilizations or predatory species. Nathan gave the order to set course for the moon. As the stellar horizon approached, anticipation spread throughout the ship. For Rachel, the excitement was bittersweet. She had grown attached to Luna and her cubs, and the thought of saying goodbye was painful. But she knew it was the right thing to do. Freedom was what they deserved, not confinement within the sterile walls of a spaceship. When they arrived, the crew wasted no time preparing for the release. Luna and her cubs were carefully transported to the surface in a specially designed shuttlecraft. Rachel accompanied them, unwilling to leave their side until the very end. As the shuttle descended, the wolves pressed against the windows, their glowing eyes wide with wonder. Below them stretched a vast expanse of green forests, sparkling rivers, and rolling hills. It was a paradise compared to the barren moon where they had been abandoned. Once on the ground, Rachel opened the shuttle door, stepping aside to let Luna take the lead. The mother wolf emerged cautiously, her cubs trailing behind her. For a moment they stood still, taking in their surroundings. Then, with a burst of energy, the cubs bounded forward, exploring the grassy terrain with playful enthusiasm. Luna watched them for a moment before turning her gaze toward Rachel. Rachel knelt down, tears brimming in her eyes. "This is your home now," she said softly. "Be safe." Luna tilted her head, as if acknowledging Rachel's words. Then, with a final glance, she turned and trotted after her cubs, disappearing into the forest. Rachel stayed rooted to the spot, watching until the last glimmer of metallic fur vanished among the trees. Back aboard the stellar horizon, the mood was somber yet hopeful. The crew gathered in the mess hall, sharing stories and memories of their time with the wolves. Emily played videos she had recorded, capturing moments of playfulness, curiosity, and connection. Jake admitted that he would miss their presence despite his earlier reservations. Even Nathan allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability, expressing pride in how far they had come as a team. Later that night, Keicho stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The weight of saying goodbye lingered, but so did a profound sense of fulfillment. They had given Luna and her cubs a second chance at life, a gift that transcended species and boundaries. In doing so, they had reminded themselves of humanity's capacity for compassion and courage. Nathan joined her after a while, standing silently beside her. "Do you think they'll be okay?" he asked. Rachel smiled faintly. "I think they'll thrive. They're survivors, Commander, just like us." Nathan nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Then maybe we did something right." As the ship drifted onward, carrying its crew deeper into the unknown, the memory of the wolves remained etched in their hearts. They had started this journey seeking discovery, but they had found something greater. The reminder that even in the vastness of space, empathy and connection could light the way. The stellar horizon drifted silently through the stars, its engines humming softly as it carried its crew toward new horizons. The release of Luna and her cubs had left a void aboard the ship, but it was a void filled with hope rather than regret. For Rachel, the days that followed were bittersweet. She often found herself wandering to the biolab, staring at the empty containment area where the wolves had once been. The memories of their glowing eyes, their curious natures, and their quiet trust lingered like a comforting shadow. Nathan noticed Rachel's wistfulness and made an effort to check in with her. One evening, he found her sitting alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. He slid into the seat beside her, offering a small smile, still thinking about them. Rachel nodded, her voice soft. Psst. It's hard not to. They were part of our lives for so long. I wonder how they're doing. They're survivors, Nathan reminded her gently. You gave them the best chance we could. The forest moon is perfect for them. I know, Rachel said, though her tone carried a hint of doubt. But it's strange, isn't it? After everything we went through, they're gone now, and we'll probably never see them again. That's the point, though, Nathan replied. We didn't save them to keep them close. We saved them to give them freedom. Sometimes letting go is the hardest part of helping. Rachel sighed, leaning back in her chair. I guess you're right, it's just, they changed us, didn't they? All of us. Nathan smiled faintly. Yeah, they did. Maybe that's their legacy. It reminded us what it means to care not just for each other, but for life itself. The weeks passed, and the crew settled into a new rhythm. Life aboard the Stellar Horizon wasn't the same without the wolves, but their absence had left an indelible mark. Conversations in the mess hall often turned to stories about Luna and her cubs, their playful antics, their moments of curiosity, and the bond they had formed with the humans who cared for them. Even Jake, who had once been the most skeptical, found himself reminiscing fondly. You ever notice how Orion always tried to sneak out of the enclosure? Jake asked one day during lunch, a grin tugging at his lips. Little troublemaker, Emily laughed. And Vigo, she was always hiding behind Luna, peeking out like she was afraid of her own shadow. Sirius was my favorite, Jake admitted. Quiet, but always watching like he was figuring us out. Rachel joined them, carrying a tray of food. They were all special, she said, her voice warm. Each of them had their own personality. It's hard to believe they weren't human. But they taught us something important, Emily added. That intelligence and emotions aren't limited to us. That connection can happen anywhere, even with creatures from another world. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the underlying sentiment remained. The wolves had become more than just passengers on the ship. They had been teachers, showing the crew the value of empathy, patience, and trust. Their presence had challenged preconceptions and opened minds, leaving behind lessons that would stay with everyone for years to come as the ship continued its journey. The crew began preparing for their next mission. Scans of nearby systems revealed intriguing anomalies, a cluster of drifting asteroids emitting strange energy signals, a nebula with unusual radiation patterns, and a distant planet shrouded in thick clouds. Each discovery sparked excitement and debate, reigniting the sense of purpose that had driven the crew since the beginning of their voyage. But before they could move forward, Nathan called one final meeting to reflect on their experience with the wolves. The entire senior staff gathered in the briefing room, their expressions thoughtful and reflective. Nathan stood at the head of the table, his hands resting lightly on its surface. We've accomplished something incredible, he began, his voice steady. Not just by saving Luna and her cubs, but by learning from them. They showed us that exploration isn't just about finding new worlds, it's about understanding them, about connecting with them. Rachel nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. And they reminded us that compassion isn't a weakness, it's a strength. That's something we should carry with us wherever we go. Jake chimed in, his usual skepticism softened by recent events. Yeah, well, maybe next time we won't have to deal with alien weapons disguised as wolves. The comment drew laughter from the group, easing the weight of the moment. But beneath the humor lay a shared understanding. The wolves had changed them. They had pushed the crew to confront their fears, question their assumptions, and embrace the unknown. In doing so, they had shaped the way the crew viewed themselves and their role in the galaxy. Nathan concluded the meeting with a simple statement. Today, we chose empathy over fear. We gave those creatures a second chance, and maybe, just maybe, we reminded ourselves of what it means to be human. Days later, the Stellar Horizon arrived at the edge of the mysterious nebula. Its swirling colors painted the viewport in hues of gold and crimson, casting a warm glow across the bridge. The crew worked together seamlessly, coordinating scans and gathering data. Despite the challenges ahead, there was a sense of unity, shared determination to face whatever lay beyond with courage and curiosity. Rachel stood at her station, monitoring readings from the xenobiology lab. Though her heart still ached for Luna and her cubs, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The wolves had shown her that life in all its forms was worth fighting for. Whether it was studying alien ecosystems or deciphering cryptic energy signals, every discovery mattered. Every step forward brought humanity closer to understanding the universe and their place within it. At the end of a long shift, Rachel returned to the observation deck. The nebula stretched endlessly outside, its beauty both uninspiring and humbling. As she stared out at the stars, she thought about Luna and her cubs, now free to roam the forests of their new home. She imagined them thriving, growing stronger with each passing day. Perhaps she thought they were looking up at the same stars, right now wondering about the humans who had given them a second chance. A soft sound drew her attention. Turning, she saw Nathan standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light from the corridor. "Mind if I join you?" "Asked, of course not," Rachel replied, gesturing to the seat beside her. Nathan sat down, his gaze fixed on the nebula. "Beautiful, isn't it?" "It is," Rachel agreed. "Makes you feel small, doesn't it?" "In a good way," Nathan said. "Reminds you that there's always more to explore, more to learn." Rachel smiled faintly. "Do you think we'll ever find another species like them? Creatures who challenge us to be better?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But if we do, I hope we handle it the same way we handled this, with kindness and respect." Rachel nodded, her thoughts drifting back to the wolves. Though they were far away now, their impact would never fade. They had taught the crew and, perhaps all of humanity, that connection could transcend barriers. Whether they were cultural, biological, or cosmic. In a universe full of mysteries, that lesson was the greatest discovery of all. As the ship moved deeper into the nebula, its lights dimmed to allow the crew a clearer view of the stars. Somewhere in the distance, Luna let out a low howl, her voice echoing through the forest. It was a sound filled with gratitude, with resilience, and with hope. And somewhere aboard the stellar horizon, Rachel closed her eyes, listening to the silence and feeling somehow that the wolves were still with them.